Hello. Yes. So the total cost of everything, yes, is 5,725 naira. Yes, 5,725 naira. Okay, we should make a round figure for you. All right. Let's see what we can do. 5,725. Now let's see what we can do so as to make a round figure for you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. What is that round figure we are talking about? I just spoke with a customer, but it is not unusual. Sometimes you work for someone or somebody wants to buy something from you, and then it happens that maybe the money that is on top of the whole number, let's say that, it's possible the person does not have that amount. Okay, like in this case, 5,725 naira. My customer possibly does not know how to get 5 naira. It's difficult to get 5 naira now. Yes, because it's just not there again. It's no longer so much used in buying things. And so the customer is now requesting, can we make it a round figure? Oh, simply meaning that it's possible for us to make money round figure. And so the question is, how do we do that? I could tell the customer, all right, 5,725 naira. Okay, pay 5,730 naira. That 25 naira. That 5 naira is difficult to get now. Okay, so just make it 5,730 naira. Or I might just decide to say, okay, fine, make it 6,000. All these things are round. We're trying to make it round figures, okay? What if the amount of money that my invisible customer was to pay was 5,723 naira? 23 naira. Sadly, we no longer make use of coins so much, and of course, it will be difficult for the customer to get in cash that 3 naira. So he might still request, let's make this in round figure. How do I get the 3 naira to add up to that 5,720 something, Okay, am I true to say, all right, I understand. Okay, pay 5,720 naira. So I'll just kick off that 3 naira on top. In mathematics, there is this topic that will help you to understand this idea of round figure, okay? There is a topic that will help you to understand how to avoid all this issue of small values. And that topic is what I'm going to teach you today. And so I'm welcoming you to our mathematics class on the topic rounding off. Also called estimation sometimes, or approximation. And good enough, this happens to be part 6 of our number and numeration. The last part of the first part of foundational mathematics. I'm so glad to welcome you to this class. Rounding off. What is it all about? On the board here, I've got these short notes, okay? When we talk about rounding off, there are 2 things we can do. It is either we round up or we round down. Any one of these is done when talking about rounding off. So the question could be, what is rounding up? And what is rounding down? The short note will guide you, but I'll quickly give an explanation to that. And this will help us to actually know what we can do for our customer who never had maybe 5 naira to add to the money he's to pay, or who never had 3 naira to add to the money he's to pay. What is rounding up? We have this short note on the board to guide you. When we talk about rounding up, it is important for you to know that once any number is up to 5 or above 5, that number, that digit can be rounded up. And how do you do that? Simply remove 1 from that digit. Since that digit is up to 5, or even more than 5, Simply remove 1 from it and then add it to the next place value on the left-hand side of this number we are talking about. A quick example, just consider that I gave you 15. 15 is 1 5, alright? You can see that. And now in this 15, I now say you should round it off to the nearest tens. So you see you are rounding off into the tens. Now if you check units, you have 5 there. 5 can be rounded up. So all you now have to do, since the question said, okay, we should round off into the nearest tens. I'll come to the unit side. I'll check the digits under the unit. Of course, it's 5 there because we're talking about 15. Then I'll simply remove 1 from that 5. Just do it, pick 1. Add it to the tens digits. And the tens digit is 1, is that not so? So if you add 1 to the tens digits, it will become 2. Now, when you come to the unit digit, which is 5, that is where you removed 1 from. Automatically, that 5 will become 0. Then the tens digit there will now become 2 because you added 1. Until you have 2 0, which is 20. I have rounded up 15. It's a rounding off process. Is that okay? So to round up is simply to remove 1 from any digit that is up to 5 or above 5. And then adding it to the place value on its left-hand side. Rounding down is the next one to talk about. What do we mean when we talk about rounding down? First, you should know that we round down any digit that is less than 5. If a digit is not up to 5, so that digit could be 4, it could be 3, 2, 1. Such digit is being rounded down because it is not up to 5. Is that okay? And what do we mean by rounding down? It's simple. Just close your eyes and change the digit to 0. So once again, let's go back to this example and see. Is that okay? The example of, 5,723 naira. Now, we are going to round down. Let's round off that number, say to the nearest tens. Look at the number 5,723. Now I'm rounding off to the nearest tens. So you check the tens number, you have 2 there. Now, that is the place value you are rounding off into. So what do? Go to the number, the digit, under the unit place value. Then you check, is that number up to 5? Or is it less than 5? Clearly, the unit digit there is 3, which is less than 5. So rounding off into the tens number, what I will do is simply to change it to 0. Change that unit number, that unit digit which is 3 there, change it to what? 0. Therefore, you will now have 5,720. And you have rounded down. That is how simple we handle rounding off. Remember, once a number is up to 5, round up. If a number is less than 5, round down. Note, once any digit is rounded off, the place value there, that's that digit there, and any other digit on the right hand side automatically changes to 0. You saw that in our example of 15 and that of 5,723. As always, I tell you about the secrets, the things that should guide you, the principle, things you need to be thinking about when you are solving a particular problem. And here on the board, I've got 2 secrets. When dealing with rounding off, what should you know? Secret number 1. When a question is given to you, quickly identify the place value, PV, okay, that you are rounding off into. Identify that place value. For example, you saw this question, okay, let's round off into the nearest tens. Good. It means you need to go and identify the place value you're rounding off to, which in my statement is what? Tens. What if I say round off to the nearest 10,000? Okay, then you have to identify the place value 10,000 in the number given to you. That's the first thing you do. Identifying the place value you're rounding off to. And then number 2, secret number 2, You have to check if the number, that is the digit, under the place value just after it, on the right hand side, is up to 5 or less than 5. That is to say, if the digit on the right hand side of the place value you are rounding off into, if the digit on its right hand side is less than 5 or greater than 5, or even 5 exactly. Now, if you look at this secret number 1 and 2, it tells us something. How simple rounding off is. If a problem is given to you in rounding off, all you have to do is to locate two place values. The one that you are rounding off into, which must be mentioned in the question, it must be stated. And then you check the place value on its right hand side, just the one less than it. So if I am rounding off into the nearest hundreds, for example, then my interest would be the 100 place value and the tens place value, because we have hundreds and tens. If I'm rounding off into the nearest, let's say tenths, then I will be interested in that place value tenths, that decimal place value tenths, and the one just after it on the right hand side, which is hundredths. So for every rounding off problem, there are two place values you must be interested in. Am I communicating? Now, once you identify the digit that is on the right hand side of the place value you are rounding off into, you now check if that digit is to be rounded up or if that digit is to be rounded down. That is what we now have in 2i and 2ir, telling you how you now do the rounding off. I've explained that earlier. I hope this is clear, right? So this is just the whole idea of rounding off. Sometimes the question comes as correct or approximate or estimate. Any one of these statements is still the same as to round off. Doing something about rounding off. I know when we talk about rounding off, it is either you round up or you do what? Round down. Now, I've got these 8 questions I am going to blast for you. Now, these 8 questions are divided into 4 sections. So we're going to pick 2 questions in one section. Is that okay? You're going to see as you do that. When I have done solving these 8 questions, believe me, as always, everything about rounding off will become 1 plus 1 for you. So the question is, are you ready? Now I can hear that. Are you ready? Say that so that someone around you will hear. Are you ready? That's good. So it is time now. We're going to move on into our very first question, number 1. Here we have 1A and 1B. In question number 1A, we are to round off 2,534 to the nearest thousand. Then question number 1B, correct 89,319 to the nearest tens. So it's going to be fast in solving this question, alright? There's nothing difficult in this. Already, I've taught you a lot of things you need to know when you're dealing with anything that has to do with place value. So we go. The first question, 1A, we have to round off 2,534 to the nearest thousand. Now, if you look at this, the place values are thousand, 100, tens, and units. So we have 4, 3, 5, and 2. And we are rounding off to the nearest what? 1,000. So this is where I'm rounding off into, to the nearest 1,000. So what will I do? I have to identify that place value and then identify another place value, the lesser one just to the right hand side of this 1,000. And the lesser place value to the right hand side of this 1,000 is 100. So these 2 place values will be my interest. Now I'm rounding off into the 1,000. So all I have to do is to ask myself the digit under the 100 place value. Is it up to 5 or is it less than 5? And clearly if you look at this, it is up to 5. This is 5 here. Therefore you're going to do what? Round up. And in rounding up, what do? Simply add 1 to the 1,000 place value you are rounding off into. So adding up to this, what is going to happen? This will reduce to 0. You know that. So let me just cancel it off. And so my answer is going to be 2 plus 1. And 2 plus 1 is going to give me 3. Of course, this one also we go down. This one also we go down to 0. And so I'll have 0, 0, 0. This is the answer. Conclusion, therefore, 2,534 is equal to 3,000 in the nearest thousand. Question number 1b. The solution, we are to correct 89,319. The place values you have there begins with tens of thousand. Then we have thousand, hundred, tens, and units. Once again, this is going to give us 9, 1, and then 3, 9, and 8. Let's look at the question. Correct to the nearest what? Tens. And so our interest would be identifying the place value we are rounding off into, which is tens. And then you check the place value to its right hand side. Okay, the place value just on its right hand side, which of course is units. Ask yourself the number under units, is it up to 5 or less than 5? And good enough, you can see there that the number is 9, even more than 5. So you round what? Up. And how do you round up? Simply come and add 1 to the tens place value that you are rounding off into. Alright, so doing that, this will reduce, Let me use blue marker. That 9 will reduce to 0. So adding up in the tens place value, this is going to give us 2. Then bring down 3, 9, and 8. This would be 0. Therefore, 89,319 is equal to 89,320 in the nearest tens. 320. So 89,320 in the nearest tens. And now we are moving on to question number 2a and 2b. Now you see clearly we are done with the first section, 2 questions here. And these questions are just simply rounding up problems. So you see, I decided not to tell you that they are on rounding up. It is good for you to know when a question is given to you, how do you get to know that this one is going to be rounding up, the other is going to be rounding down? So you can find it out yourself. And of course, like I've always said, it depends on whether the number you are rounding from is up to 5 or less than 5. We are going to the second part of our 8 questions, alright? 2 are down already. Let us look at this question, number 2a and 2b. Round off 2,534 to the nearest hundreds. That's question 2a. And then 2b approximates 94,885 to the nearest 10,000s. That's the nearest tens of thousands. Let us see how we go about this question. Solution to 2a. Now we have this number there. The place value is 1,000. We have 100, tens, and what? Unit. Let's fix up the digits there and see. This is 2, 5, 3, and 4. We are rounding off to the nearest hundreds in the question number 2a. So I have to identify that hundreds place value, which of course is this, Now, you need to identify the place value you are to round from. You are rounding off from, which of course is always the next one to the right hand side of the one you are rounding off into. Now, check the digits under the place value you are rounding off from. I'm rounding off from tens, into hundreds. And so the number there under that tens, I'll ask myself, is it up to 5 or less than 5? And clearly, if you look at this, you will see that it is less than what? 5. This is 3, which means we are going to add 0 under this place value of 100. But it's a waste of time. Since you know you are adding 0, must you go and add anything? Why not just go straight and then cancel this, cancel this? You're going to come down to 0. Then you don't add anything here. If you must add, remember it is 0 you are putting. That's plus 0. That is if you must add. But it's not necessary. So here I will step down 2 and 5. This will become 0, 0. This is the solution. Conclusion, therefore, 2,534 is equal to 2,500, right? In the nearest hundreds. You can see how simple this is, right? So let us move on to Solution 2b. Question 2b, the solution, we are approximating 94,885 to the nearest 10,000. Okay, must we always write these place values? I think we've reached a level where we may not really need to bother ourselves writing place values. You should have them at heart already. I've always encouraged that. Therefore, I'm going to solve this question, number 2b, without writing a place value of this. Looking at this already, I know it is in tens of thousands. That 9 is under 10,000 place value. And that is where I'm rounding off into. So I will simply come over. I have 94,000 and then 885. I'm rounding off into the tens of thousand place value. So if this is where I'm rounding off into, the question will now be, from which place value am I rounding off from? I'm rounding off from this place value of 1,000, the one just to its right. So I will now ask myself, this number I'm rounding off from, is it up to 5 or less than 5? And you see clearly that the number is less than 5. Therefore, which type of rounding off am I going to do? Are you going to do? You are going to do rounding down. Because this number you are rounding off from, which is this 4, is less than 5. What do you do? It's simple. Just draw my line here. And then I would just, cancel off this 4. Let it go off. Every other thing there will also go off, they become 0, 0, And so this will come down as 0. I have my 9 here. Let me step it down. Then 0, 0, 0, and then 0. So you see this is 90,000 to the nearest tens of thousand. Therefore, 94,885 is equal to 90,000 in the nearest 10,000. And again, you notice that in these two questions, 2a and 2b, this gives us section 2 of our 8 questions I told you I'm going to blast for you. And clearly, these two questions, 2a and 2b, are problems based on rounding down. But again, I didn't tell you that these are rounding down questions. I just gave them to you. Let's look at them. Look at the question we are asked, and then know if you're going to do rounding up or rounding down. And you saw it clearly that this is rounding down. Get ready for our third section. Okay, let's see questions you are going to solve in this case. Question number 3a and b. In this question number 3a and 3b that forms section 3 of our 8 questions, my interest is to teach you how you can do rounding off into the nearest whole number. Alright, the main thing I expect you to learn about rounding off, you've learned them already from section 1 and section 2 problems. Does that make sense? So in this case, I'm only interested in saying when you are asked this question, round off to the nearest whole number, what are you expected to do? Now it's very simple. Rounding off to the nearest whole number simply means round off to the nearest unit. To the nearest what? Unit. It means you are rounding off into the unit's place value. Does that make sense? It could be rounding down, it could be rounding up. So let us see what these two questions are for us. Solution to 3a, we are to correct 18.19 to the nearest whole number. Now I'm going to solve this question without writing the place values because I have them at heart already. Now, I want to believe that by now you've memorized your place values very well. It's very simple. What I have there is 18.19, and this 18.19, see clearly that this one is under tens. This 8 is under units. Then this 1 is under tenths. And this 9 is under hundredths because they are decimal digit place values. Now, I am to round off or correct, as the question said, into the nearest whole number. And so it means that I will be interested in the unit's place value. This is where I'm rounding off into. Now, from which place value am I rounding off from? Of course, you know it is the one just on its right hand side, which is tenths. Tenths. Now, I'm going to ask myself, I'm rounding off from tenths into unit place value now. Is that not so? Because we're rounding off or correcting into the nearest whole number. So this number I'm rounding off from, I am correcting from. This number, is it up to 5 or less than 5? And you see clearly this is 1. It is less than 5. Therefore, I am going to round down the 10th digit. And you know, to round down the 10th digit, all you do is just change it to 0. Is that not so? Therefore, I'll cancel this, cancel this. They're going to go off. And then my answer will be 18.00. You know, you step down zeros. Do not forget, when I introduced this topic, I told you after you round off, the digit you rounded off from and everything to its right hand side automatically becomes 0. Let's conclude. Therefore, 18.19 is equal to 18.00, or this 18.00 is same as 18, just like that. This 0.00, because there is no other digit which is not 0 after these ones. It means that this 00 is nothing. You can just forget about it in the nearest whole number. This takes us to solution of 3b, and that 3b we are asked to round off to the nearest whole number. Once again, I don't need writing place values. It's not necessary. But if you still want to write, the choice is yours. This will be tens, this 3 will be units. Then this 8 is tenths, and 7 is hundredths. I am rounding off to the nearest whole number, 43.87. Of course, I told you rounding off to the nearest whole number, your business, your interest would be the unit place value and then the tenths place value. You are rounding off into the unit place value from the tenths place value. That's simply the meaning of rounding off to the nearest whole number. Now, if you look at this number I'm rounding off from, which is the 10th digit, it is 8. So I'll ask myself, is this 8 up to 5 or less than 5? And clearly, 8 is even more than 5. Remember, any number from 5 to 9, you round up. Therefore, in this case, I'll simply do plus 1. I'll come and add 1 to the unit place value that I'm rounding off into. You know, this is rounding up. And so you add 1 to this place value of units. So let us reduce this now to 0. They go off. 3 plus 1 will give us 4. And then bring down this 4. This is 0.00. And that's the answer. Therefore, 43.87 is equal to 44.00. If you want to put the 0.00, the choice is yours. Or 44 in the nearest whole number. Does this make sense? You see, we are done with everything about rounding off. But let me just take you to the last section, when the rounding off is between decimal digits. Section 4. That's what we're going to look at next. And here, on the last section of our questions here in rounding off, we have question number 4A and 4B. 4A said, round off 56.96 to the nearest hundreds. Let's solve that question number 4A first before we move on to 4B. We are rounding off, all right, 56.926 to the nearest hundreds. Let me just solve this one showing the place values. But like I said, you don't need it, okay? Just doing it just for, the sake of doing. So we have these as tens. Then the next one should be units, a decimal point. Then this will be tenths, hundreds, and thousands. Good. Fixing up the values there, we have 56, then a decimal point, 926. We are rounding off to the nearest hundreds. So what do? Identify the hundreds place value. And then identify the place value you are rounding off from, which of course you know is this one, thousands, which is on the right hand side of that hundreds. Now looking at this thousandth digit that I'm rounding off from is up to 5, is that not so? In fact, that digit is 6. It means that this rounding off is going to be what? A round up process. So I'll simply come and write plus 1. I'll add the 1 under the hundredths digits because that's where I'm rounding off into. Good. Once you do that, you know what's going to happen to this 6. It reduces to 0. And so working this out, 2 plus 1 is 3. Step down your 9, put your point here. Then this is 6 and 5. This will become 0, so it gets down there. And we are done. In conclusion, therefore, 56.926 is equal to 56.930. And this 930 is still the same as 93. Are you following, right? In the nearest hundreds. Take note, if I don't want to show this 0, I can just forget about it. Because you have a decimal point before this. These are decimal digits. The last 0 there is insignificant. It does not make any meaning. You can just forget about it and decide to leave our answer as 56.93. It's still okay. It's still correct. Alright, moving on to 4b. In 4b, we have this question. Interesting one, right? The length of a field is 0.316 m. This m represents meters. Is that okay? 0.316 meters. Estimate the length of the field to the nearest tenths. Estimate the length of the field to the nearest tenths. Now we have options here. Option D said, I don't know. If I don't know is the option you're thinking, then I better advise you, please go back and rewatch this video again. Because after all the wonderful things we've done at this rounding off, then you should not even think about that option of you don't know. You should know. You should know. Is that okay? Yeah, let us see how we solve this problem. We are to estimate to the nearest tenths. Now, the measurement of the field given to us is 0.316. So I'll write this 0.316. I am not going to show the place value. I'm rounding off to the nearest tenths. So I will identify the tenths place value, which is 3 here. And then the place value I'm rounding off from, which is this hundredth place value. The digit there is 1. I'll now ask myself, rounding off into the nearest tenths, estimating into the tenth value. What do? I'll check the hundredth digits. This 100 digits is less than 5. Therefore, this problem is a rounding down problem. And so, I'm going to draw this and simply reduce this to 0. Take this one to 0 as well too. And my answer will be 0.300. This is still the same as 0.3. In conclusion, therefore, the length of the field is equal to 0.300 or 0.3 meters. Okay, meters. That's just the answer to that question. And of course, we can check for the correct option, and that goes with option B. We are done successfully solving all the questions necessary under rounding off, under approximation, under estimation. Alright? If you have any question, you can feel free to ask and you get a response. You know how to do that already. Send your questions across. If you understand all that I've been explained so far under this topic, please, below this video lesson, you have the lesson notes, and just after the lesson note, of course, you will see the quiz on this topic. Rounding off. The 10 questions, attempt them and see how many you can score. Remember the target score, 10 over 10. In our next class, I'm going to teach you about the brain ordering of our place values. We'll talk about the brain ordering of our place values. Yes, there I'm going to introduce you to operations. Alright, operations in numbers, where we talk about addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Of course, those things help us to have an ordered brain. Of course, the knowledge of place value is still very important there. However, take note that after the end of this class today now, we are done with number and numeration. I will be moving you to the second foundational aspect of mathematics, which has to do with operations on numbers.